You may have heard that the Carney government is reconsidering its multi-billion-dollar purchase of American F-35 fighter jets.
The United States has cautioned Canada against backing out of its purchase of American-made F-35 fighter jets.
The federal government has begun negotiations to purchase F-35 fighter jets for the Canadian military.
This was never really about fighter jets. That's the part most people miss. On the surface, it looks like a routine military purchase. Canada needs new aircraft. Companies submit bids. A decision gets made. Simple. But behind the scenes, this was a lesson in power, a reminder of how alliances actually work when tens of billions of dollars are on the line, and how choice can exist on paper while the outcome is already decided. Canada's story begins with a quiet crisis, most people outside defense. Circles barely notice. The country with the longest coastline on Earth is patrolling its skies with one of NATO's oldest fighter fleets. The CF-18 Hornets have been flying for decades. Many of them are older than the pilots, sitting inside the cockpit. They're tasked with defending Arctic airspace, monitoring the northern approaches to North America, and fulfilling NATO commitments abroad. These planes aren't just aging, they're becoming expensive to maintain, harder to keep mission ready, and increasingly risky to rely on. This is an optional defense. Canada shares responsibility for North American airspace through NORAD. Any threat coming from the north doesn't stop at the border. It moves straight toward the United States. That makes Canada's fighter fleet not just a national issue, but a continental one. Replacement wasn't a luxury. It was urgent. So the competition opens. On paper, it looks fair. Multiple contenders step forward. America's F-35, marketed as a fifth-generation marvel. Boeing's Super Hornet, familiar and reliable. Europe's Rafale and Typhoon, both proven in combat. And then there's the unexpected entry, Sweden's Gripen E, a jet most casual observers barely recognize, but one that immediately catches analysts' attention. The Gripen wasn't built to impress crowds at air shows. It was designed for survival. Sweden built it expecting war on its doorstep. Harsh winters, limited infrastructure, long stretches of empty terrain. Conditions that look suspiciously similar to northern Canada, the aircraft can operate from highways. It needs minimal ground crews. Turnaround times are measured in minutes, not hours. It's a jet designed for flexibility, not spectacle. But the real shock doesn't come from its technical design. It comes from the numbers. When analysts quietly compare the Gripen to the F-35, the gap is impossible to ignore. The upfront purchase price alone creates billions in difference. But that's only the beginning. The real weight comes from long-term operating costs. Over decades of service, one aircraft quietly drains budgets while the other leaves room to breathe. When everything is added up, the lifetime cost difference climbs into territory that feels unreal. Tens of billions. Enough to reshape an entire defense strategy. Money like that doesn't just buy aircraft. It buys ships, cyber defense, modernized ground forces, flexibility. From a purely financial perspective, the answer seems obvious. And yet, this is where logic runs into geopolitics. The Pentagon doesn't need to make public threats. It doesn't need dramatic speeches. Its first tool sounds harmless. Enough. Interoperability, a word that appears in every briefing, every report, every diplomatic conversation. It's framed as technical necessity, shared systems, seamless coordination, common standards. But interoperability isn't just about communication. It's about dependency. The F-35 isn't merely a fighter jet. It's a node inside a massive, tightly controlled military network. Data flows through American systems. Intelligence feeds move across American infrastructure. Training, maintenance, doctrine, all aligned with U.S. standards. Once you're inside that ecosystem, leaving it becomes expensive, complicated, and politically uncomfortable. The Gripen isn't isolated. It integrates with NATO systems. It uses shared data links, but it doesn't connect to everything. Certain networks remain exclusive. And that exclusion becomes the argument. Step outside the system, and you risk being cut off from the information flow your military has relied on for decades. That's not a technical warning. It's a strategic one. Then comes the second lever, economics. Canadian companies are deeply embedded in the global F-35 supply chain. Thousands of jobs depend on it. Aerospace manufacturing, advanced components, long-term contracts spread across multiple regions. No one says the words out loud. They don't have to. If Canada walks away, those contracts don't automatically stay. Work can move, jobs can disappear. Political pressure follows naturally. It's not framed as punishment. It's framed as reality. And then there's the pressure you never see. Closed-door meetings. Senior officials flying in without press announcements. Conversations that don't end in statements, but in silence. Warnings delivered softly. Choosing a different aircraft will complicate cooperation. Arctic defense will face challenges. NORAD modernization may encounter obstacles. The details are never spelled out. They don't need to be. Canada isn't just another ally. It's one of America's most deeply integrated partners, a founding NORAD member, a Five Eyes intelligence ally, a country whose airspace forms the northern shield of the United States. From Washington's perspective, Canadian air defense is American air defense. That reality shapes everything. Sweden makes its case. Technology transfer, local production, industrial offsets. A chance for Canada to diversify suppliers and regain some control. None of it is wrong, but Sweden can't offer access to exclusive intelligence networks or the unspoken assurance that comes with alignment to the world's dominant military power. Eventually, the decision comes. The F-35 is chosen, billions committed. The Gripen quietly exits the stage. When the numbers are revisited later, the gap is staggering. Tens of billions that could have gone elsewhere. But by then, the outcome is locked in. This isn't just Canada's story. Australia, Japan, South Korea, Poland, different countries. Same result. Not because alternatives didn't exist, but because choosing them carried invisible costs. That's the real lesson. For America's closest allies, defense procurement comes with boundaries. Choice exists, but only within limits shaped by power and integration. Canada didn't just buy a fighter jet, it confirmed its place inside a system where influence matters more than price. And once you see that, you realize something uncomfortable. In modern alliances, the most powerful weapon isn't a jet at all, it's influence.